Hello and welcome to Unbuilt Giants, a series that looks at the development and demise of some of history's most notable and sometimes bizarre skyscraper projects. Tatlin's Tower, officially known as the Monument to the Third International, was a visionary architectural project designed in 1919-1920 by Russian artist and architect Vladimir Tatlin. Conceived in the aftermath of the Bolshevik Revolution, the tower was intended as both a functional headquarters for the Comintern and a monument to the global ambitions of communism. Its radical form, a spiraling steel framework enclosing rotating glass volumes, symbolized the dynamism, transparency, and technological aspirations of the new Soviet society. Although never built due to material shortages, engineering challenges, and shifting political priorities, the tower became an enduring icon of constructivism and a powerful expression of revolutionary utopianism. Vladimir Tatlin established himself as a pioneering and influential figure within the Russian avant-garde during the early years of the 20th century, before the seismic political shifts brought about by the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. Emerging from a background that combined both artistic training and practical experience, Tatlin pursued an experimental path that challenged academic conventions and traditional aesthetic hierarchies. His work increasingly focused on the physical properties of materials and the construction of form through new industrial processes. In the years leading up to the revolution, Tatlin's artistic trajectory was profoundly shaped by his encounters with modernist movements in Western Europe, especially French Cubism and Italian Futurism. A visit to Paris in 1914 brought him into contact with the work of Pablo Picasso, whose sculptural assemblages, made from non-traditional materials, offered Tatlin a new conceptual framework for understanding space, volume, and construction. This exposure led Tatlin to abandon the illusionistic concerns of painting and instead to explore three-dimensional compositions constructed from everyday industrial materials such as wood, iron, glass, and wire. His counter-reliefs, suspended asymmetrically in corners or against walls, defied conventional sculptural expectations by emphasizing the tension between forces, between suspension, weight, and torque, rather than relying on symmetry, mass, or representational content. These works did not depict or narrate, but instead revealed the inherent qualities of their constituent parts, embracing the principle of factura, which placed importance on the tactile and visual textures of materials themselves. Through these counter-reliefs, Tatlin began to articulate a new visual language that was deeply rooted in the emerging ideology of constructivism, a movement dedicated to reconciling art and industrial production in the service of the social good. Constructivist theory rejected the idea of art as autonomous or decorative, and instead championed a utilitarian and rational aesthetics aligned with the needs of the collective society. After the October Revolution, when the Bolsheviks seized power and set out to reshape all aspects of Russian life, including its culture, Tatlin and other avant-garde artists perceived an extraordinary opportunity to embed their ideas within the fabric of the new state. For a brief period, revolutionary politics and radical aesthetics found themselves in productive alignment. The Soviet authorities, particularly under the guidance of Anatoly Lunacharsky, head of the People's Commissariat for Enlightenment, showed a willingness to harness modernist energy in shaping the identity of the nascent socialist republic. Tatlin embraced this moment and contributed to a range of design initiatives meant to improve everyday life for workers. He designed proletarian clothing, stripped-down ergonomic furniture, and utilitarian household objects, all rooted in constructivist ideals that emphasized functionality, economy, and social purpose. Yet among all his projects, one stood out as the culmination of his ambitions: the design for the monument to the Third International, conceived in 1919. Known colloquially as Tatlin's Tower, this audacious project was intended not just as a commemorative structure, but as a literal and figurative beacon of the global communist revolution. The monument was to serve as the headquarters for the Comintern, the Third International, a Soviet-led organization devoted to promoting worldwide socialist insurrection. By designing a building of such scale and symbolism, Tatlin sought to give monumental form to the ideological aspirations of the new Soviet regime. Planned for construction in Petrograd, now St. Petersburg, the city most associated with the revolution's origins, the tower was conceived as a massive, spiraling iron structure that would physically span the banks of the Neva River. Its proposed location was significant. Petrograd, founded by Peter the Great as Russia's window to the west, became, in Tatlin's vision, a launch point for broadcasting the revolution outward to the rest of the world. The structure was not only to embody the spirit of revolutionary modernity, but also to function as an active center of political communication and administration. Through its exposed steel framework and glass-walled interior spaces, Tatlin envisioned a transparent and dynamic architecture, rejecting traditional monumentality in favor of movement, light, and mechanization. The tower, though never realized, was meant to be both a sculptural expression of ideological energy and a functioning apparatus of governance, an unprecedented fusion of symbolic and practical ambition. Tatlin imagined the monument to the Third International as a staggering 400-meter-tall structure, towering a full 100 meters above the Eiffel Tower, which at the time stood as the pinnacle of industrial architectural achievement. His design was both visionary and provocative, meant not only to rival Western symbols of modernity, but to announce, through sheer physical presence, the dawning of a new era under communism. Constructed entirely from modern industrial materials such as iron, steel, and glass, the tower was to be an embodiment of Soviet technological progress and ideological ambition. The basic form of the tower was extraordinary, a monumental double helix spiraling upward around a tilted central axis. This tilted shaft gave the entire structure a dramatic diagonal thrust, making it appear as if it were leaning into the future. Within this exoskeletal framework, 4 immense geometric volumes, each a different shape and made of glass, would be suspended. These volumes included a cube at the base, a pyramid set above it, a cylindrical volume higher up, and finally a hemisphere positioned at the summit. The overall visual impression was of a machine-like kinetic structure in constant transformation, a sharp break from classical architectural symmetry and static monumentality. Each of the internal forms was designed with a specific political and functional role in mind, and they were to rotate at distinct speeds to symbolize the rhythm and dynamism of revolutionary governance. The lowest and largest volume, the cube, was to complete a full revolution once a year. This space would serve as a grand hall for international legislative assemblies, a forum for delegates of the Third International to convene and shape global socialist policy. Above the cube, the pyramid would turn once every month and house the executive branch of the Comintern, where higher-level planning and administration would take place. Rising further, the cylinder was designed to rotate once daily and function as an information hub, distributing news, manifestos, and ideological materials via telegraph, radio transmission, and public loudspeakers. It would also serve as a propaganda nerve center aimed at projecting the voice of Soviet internationalism outward to the world. At the very top of the structure, the hemisphere would revolve once every hour and contain advanced radio transmission equipment. This component was to act as a symbolic and literal broadcast tower, radiating the message of communist progress across the globe. Tatlin's vision extended beyond the structural and functional. He imagined the tower as a living, breathing participant in the revolutionary process. It would be capable of dazzling public displays. Among the additional planned features were vast illuminated signs, searchlights mounted on rotating arms, and even a projection system that could cast propaganda slogans and messages into the sky or across the cloud cover, transforming the weather itself into a medium for communication. The transparent glass interiors and open steel framework embodied the ideal of transparency and openness in governance, while the sheer scale and constant motion of the structure were meant to symbolize both the unstoppable momentum of the revolution and the technological triumph of socialism over capitalism. In totality, Tatlin's Tower was not simply a building, it was a utopian device, a fusion of architecture, engineering, politics, and art. It was designed to be a monument to a global future that never arrived, and its unbuilt form remains one of the most powerful visualizations of 20th-century revolutionary ambition. Despite receiving official endorsement in the immediate aftermath of the October Revolution, Vladimir Tatlin's monument to the Third International was never built. The grand vision collided head-on with the bleak realities of post-revolutionary Russia. The country was mired in economic chaos, social upheaval, and the devastation of civil war. Industrial infrastructure was in ruins, and basic necessities were in short supply. In this context, a colossal steel and glass structure towering 400 meters into the sky was beyond the reach of even the most determined idealists. Steel, an essential material for the project, was particularly scarce. Russia's industry was simply incapable of producing or transporting the quantity and quality of metal required for the construction. Even the timber used to build the original scale model reflected this material scarcity. The technical demands of Tatlin's design only compounded the difficulties. Its rotating glass volumes, each intended to move at a different pace and perform specific functions within the political machinery of the Comintern, would have required a complex array of mechanical systems, none of which had yet been tested on such a scale. Whether these systems could have been engineered to operate reliably remains doubtful even today. The harsh truth was that Tatlin's Tower, for all its symbolic power and ideological resonance, could not be built with the tools and resources available in early Soviet Russia. As the 1920s wore on, the political atmosphere shifted. The early years of revolutionary experimentation gave way to the more pragmatic, centralized goals of building communism within the borders of the Soviet Union. The hope of international revolution faded, replaced by a policy of consolidation and control. In this climate, the avant-garde, once embraced for its innovation and energy, began to appear ideologically suspect. By the early 1930s, socialist realism had been decreed the official style of Soviet art and architecture. It rejected the formal abstraction and radical materialism of constructivism in favor of accessible, heroic, and often monumental, figurative work rooted in traditional forms. Tatlin, along with many of his contemporaries, found himself pushed to the margins. He ceased to work on architectural projects and turned instead to other design endeavors, including an experimental human-powered flying machine, which, like the tower, never progressed beyond prototype stage. Over time, he faded from public view, and by the time of his death in 1953, his work had been largely forgotten in the Soviet Union. Yet, while the physical structure never rose above the skyline of Petrograd, Tatlin's Tower endured in the cultural imagination. It became an enduring symbol of the revolutionary aspirations of the Soviet avant-garde, its spiraling form and bold vision representing the unfulfilled promises of a new world. Throughout the 20th century, the tower was repeatedly resurrected in the form of models, drawings, and reconstructions. These were especially prominent in Western Europe and North America, where Tatlin's work was embraced by the art historical canon as a landmark of constructivist thought. In 1968, the Moderna Museet in Stockholm unveiled a reconstruction of the tower's model based on archival photographs and surviving sketches. 3 years later, a new version was installed on the rooftop of the Hayward Gallery in London for the exhibition Art in Revolution. British architect Jeremy Dixon, who created the 1971 model, returned to the project in 2011 for a much larger, more detailed version that stood in the courtyard of the Royal Academy as part of the exhibition Building the Revolution, Soviet Art and Architecture 1915-1935. This model was later reinstalled in the Sainsbury Centre's Sculpture Park in Norwich in 2017, offering a compelling physical evocation of Tatlin's original vision. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, Tatlin's reputation was revisited and reassessed. Freed from the ideological constraints of Soviet cultural policy, Russian museums and scholars began to explore the legacy of the avant-garde with renewed interest. Tatlin's Tower, once marginalized or forgotten, re-emerged as a vital artifact of early Soviet modernism. Replicas and models found permanent homes in institutions such as the Tretiakov Gallery in Moscow and the State Russian Museum in St. Petersburg. In the West, Tatlin became a fixture in exhibitions on modernist and revolutionary art. Artists such as Ai Weiwei reference the tower in their own works, reinterpreting its form as a symbol of both defiance and visionary ambition. Digitally, the tower proliferated even further. It featured in online exhibitions, academic articles, speculative animations, and even commercial reproductions, its status as an icon of conceptual architecture only solidifying with time. Though the tower never materialized as a physical structure, it has had an extraordinary afterlife. It remains one of the most recognizable and influential designs of the 20th century. A monument not to a triumphant revolution, but to an unrealized future. Tatlin's Tower stands as a compelling metaphor for the tensions between radical vision and practical constraint, between utopian desire and political reality. Its image continues to inspire debates on architecture, ideology, and the role of art in shaping society. In this way, the tower has achieved a kind of immortality, not through construction, but through imagination, memory, and historical reflection. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and consider subscribing for more episodes coming soon. See you next time.